Being on the provider end, as a doctor, what we tend to see is that bleaching ages the skin faster, especially when we're using a lot of these heavy steroids, these very potent steroids on the skin. What happens is that it begins to thin out the skin and causes stretch marks. So just imagine like a nylon. If you continue to inflate it, it gets to a point it begins to stretch. You begin to see like those swellings along the surface of the nylon if you like blow into it and or stretch it out, such that even if you stretch it out and release it, it never comes back to what it is supposed to be. And so that's what happens to the skin when you use a lot of these bleaching creams. What happens is that it begins to stretch the skin. That's where the stretch marks come in, and it literally begins to tear at the skin, and then you now have all those like swellings, do you understand, at those points where the skin is very loose. The impact of this is that the skin bruises very easily. So, meaning, I mean, you just bump your hand against the wall and then you see blood under the skin. It's called ecchymosis. When it comes to a point where we have to repair the skin, so you have a cut, God forbid, an accident, something that requires us to stitch the skin. When something is already stretched that much, what happens is that by the time we put the suture through the skin and you try to tie it up, the suture just tears through the skin, because the elasticity and the thickness that the skin is supposed to have in order to hold that thread, the suture, is no longer there. So even repairing the skin after injury or whatever becomes a problem. Generally, you wrinkle faster, okay? Because the skin elasticity is also lost, you age faster. And when I'm talking about these changes, I'm not talking about when you're 70 or when you're 60. No, even in your 30s, in your 40s, you find out that there's a lot of irreversible changes that you cannot repair because of a past history of skin bleaching. Let that serve as some sort of food for thought, for you to think about before you pick up that next bottle of skin lightening cream.